Um, I know we're a couple minutes past the hour, so I want to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Deja Cyrus, and I am the manager of organizational development for our sector support team here at United Way of Central Indiana. I'm excited. I have some new faces or new names, I should say, in the crowd. Feel free to come off camera. We love to see a face, but I know that it's bright and early, so do what makes you feel comfortable. I'm just really excited to have you all join us today for the sector called Tech for Good. Harnessing AI to elevate nonprofit impact, where we have a really great and innovative discussion lined up for you all today. As we all know, technology just continues to evolve at this incredibly rapid pace. And we know nonprofits also face both exciting opportunities as well as new challenges in adapting to this rapidly changing landscape. So, today, we've prepared a discussion where we'll dive into the transformative potential of artificial intelligence, better known as AI, and how it can help nonprofits enhance their operational efficiency and amplify their social impact. So our experts, Angela Lacy of Blue Maven IT and Edwin Goutier of Launchpath, will share actionable strategies and tools to help you integrate these technologies into your mission and, amplify your social impact for your organization. So whether you're looking to improve efficiency, engage more effectively with donors, or navigating the evolving tech landscape, we'll try and cover it all for you all today. So, by the end of the call, we hope that you'll walk away with some actionable insights and some tools to help you leverage AI and lead your organization to a greater impact. So, without further ado, I want to go ahead and dive on in. Um, Angela, Edwin, thank you guys both so much for being here again. We'll just start off by, introducing yourselves to the crowd. Let us know what organization you work for, and just a little bit about your background in AI, just to kind of level set. So, Edwin, I'll begin with you, and then Angela will follow up with you.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me. My name is Edwin Goutier. I'm the CEO of Launchpath Innovation, and we're an innovation management software company. Our mission is to liberate the innovation potential of the nonprofit sector. And we do that by providing software that helps nonprofit innovators go through the innovation process with the support of AI. So AI is core to our strategy for how we support the sector and coming up with new ideas that create impact, that diversify revenue, and that create ongoing operational efficiencies within their organization. And then prior to being at Launchpath, I led innovation and strategy for United Way Worldwide and spent 15 years in the nonprofit sector through United Way. And so really excited to be back with my people today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Edwin. And then Angela, if you don't mind sharing just your role, your background, and just like a small introduction of yourself.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me here today. I'm Angela Lacy. I'm the founder and the chief technologist for Blue Maven IT. We're a managed service provider in the Indianapolis area that focuses on providing support for nonprofits. I have to do a quick shout out because I see some of my friends in the crowd, Chris, Christy, Deanna, Kelly. Hi, nice to see you here. So my background is I came from corporate IT. But right out of college, I went to IU. I have a computer science degree from IU Bloomington. And, right when I started off in the workforce, talking with friends and family members that worked for small organizations, nonprofits, schools, there was sort of a common theme of, hey, like, we don't have the same kind of access to IT support that you see in corporate. So that really inspired me early on to dream about, being able to work with nonprofits and other small organizations. So I'm very excited to be here today to talk about AI as a topic because I'll have to do a little boost for Deja, a comment that was made earlier on is, AI can cause a lot of fear and anxiety, feeling like, am I behind? What don't I know? What do I need to know? And so I think this is a really good conversation for today.
Absolutely. And I'm happy that you brought that up because that's kind of where I want us to kick our conversation off at. For like we mentioned before, we got hopped on the call, there can be just so much fear around the changing and the evolution that we are transitioning into with artificial intelligence, the challenges that arise from it, and specifically for nonprofits. Sometimes some of the organizations that we work with are working with limited budget, limited resources. So Angela, I'll begin with you. If we're a nonprofit in a position that doesn't have the same resources as these larger organizations do when it comes to technology, what are some accessible and just cost-effective ways that nonprofits can, begin integrating AI to improve their daily operations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually want to start answering the question by just talking about AI in general, because I think just kind of trying to understand the different types of AI out there, I know has helped me to sort of lessen some of that fear. So
Mhm.
there's really four types of AI, and you could argue maybe some people use different categories, but there's traditional AI, which we've heard about for years. This is like, the training robots, to do
Mhm.
things, kind of, everything required, or chess playing, the kind of AI that required, um, training. Like,
Mhm.
here's how you do this and execute this in the way that we're saying. But then there's also conversational AI, which I think is also very familiar to most of us because, I've gone to websites for years and, had a chat with clearly a bot and not a person, and that's where conversational AI, I think we all have experiences with that. And that's used a lot in the service industry already today. But the newer types that are the ones that I'm hearing more and more about are the generative AI, which I'd say is the most commonly used, probably, or would be most commonly used amongst this group starting out. And then predictive AI, which has a lot of power to it. Generative AI is really about creating content, whether it's graphics or texts. And so this is where, your chat GPTs, this is the space where that plays in, and some of the other tools I'm going to talk about here in a second. But finally, predictive AI. I don't want to leave this off the list because I know this is where there's a lot of power coming. Being able to analyze data to predict future trends can be very, very valuable. Again, I do think that generative AI is a place where many of us will start. There are a lot of tools that are free in this space. So Chat GPT, obviously we've all heard a lot about that and a lot of people use that every day. But similar tools are built into your core productivity suites. I would imagine that everybody on the call probably has either Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. So for both of those platforms, there's a free um, generative AI tool. On Microsoft's side, it's called Copilot. On the
Mhm.
Google Workspace side, it's called Gemini. And these tools are absolutely free for you to use. Now, the catch is there are paid versions of them. And generally speaking, in order to use what you get from the paid version is they start to integrate that tool into their actual productivity apps. So as an example, for Microsoft 365, I can ask Copilot a question without paying anything extra if I have a Microsoft license. I can ask it a question similar to Chat GPT. It'll generate graphics, text, but if I want to have Copilot integrated with Microsoft Outlook and write an email for me, that's where the licensing comes into play. So there is a cost, and right now I actually kind of looked up some of the costs for nonprofits that I could see published today. It looked like Copilot for nonprofits is about $27 per users per month, which it's not a small amount. Gemini was pretty expensive originally, but I've seen they've backed that price down a little bit, and now you can get Gemini if you're in Google Workspace for about $350 per user per month is what I was able to find, which is like a significant discount. And what they've done is it's not a separate license. You just have to have one of their business licenses. So to summarize, that's probably where I would recommend people start. It's generative AI. It's available as part of the tool sets you already have. I
Mhm.
think that's a great way to get started and feel more comfortable about what can this do for me.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And Edwin, kind of bouncing to you, How can AI support nonprofits in staying focused on their mission? Because a lot of the work that we do is mission driven. How can AI support nonprofits in staying focused on their mission while also helping them, increase their reach and their impact in a way that doesn't dilute those core values?
Mm. Yeah, I would say the two of the three areas where we help nonprofits innovate, it's on mission and on operations. And I think AI is a great partner in both of those. So on mission in particular, one thing that AI is really great at is supporting the innovation process, supporting the ability for a nonprofit to identify a new problem in the community that they want to solve, and then almost being like an expert assistant that helps you walk through like a design thinking approach to solving that problem. And at every stage of that process, let's say, the issue is uh, going back in time, let's think about the COVID pandemic or the opioid crisis. Imagine if we had the ability to use generative AI at that time to help us think through getting new solutions. So we have helped partners create personas and then feed those personas to AI and say what might be a good solution for this person that we're working with. If you have qualitative surveys, AI is really great at theming and tagging. So all of that, 1,000 rows of feedback that you have from community members, in about 2 seconds, you can get some themes and clusters of intelligent clusters of feedback. And then there's actually been research that shows that AI is a better innovation ideator, coming up with actual concepts than like business school students. And it is really a powerful tool for helping you come up with that first round of ideas because generative AI has access to all of the knowledge that's on the internet through like halfway through last year. And it's almost like doing a mix of like a brainstorm with somebody who has done a literary review on all of the programs that exist around the world. So you can get access to some really great and exciting thinking. And then finally, it can actually provide you with a plan on how to turn to your community and validate those ideas. Like we never want to bring new solutions to our community uh, without actually testing whether or not people want it, whether it's desired, whether it's viable financially. So it can give you a plan to actually test out how you can validate that your new solution will hit the mark with your community. And then on the operations front, it is just a really amazing tool for automation and for taking any of those processes that someone in the organization might really hate doing as part of their job and just making it way easier for them to get through the day to day. But you did mention, it's important to still stay focused on values, and there are some drawbacks to generative AI. The same generative AI works by kind of emulating the way our brains work. And we have bias in our thinking. The internet and all the content on the internet has bias in its thinking. So there is bias when you are brainstorming with AI, and you just have to be mindful of that fact. That's why we never want to put AI in the position of being the decision maker. We always want to have a human in the loop that actually decides whether or not to move forward. And then just AI can't replace us right now. It's like we have to rely on our expertise and our knowledge of our communities before we bring anything out to our communities that might have come from AI originally.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you used the word brainstorming because that I definitely leverage my AI to in that capacity. I use it somewhat as a thought partner to generate new ideas and give me a few ideas on this, or I'm thinking about doing this, and how can I push this a little bit further and whatnot. And then I use it to generate the ideas, and then I kind of take it over from there. So I love the word that you used in brainstorming because it really is thought partnering, just with artificial intelligence, but thought partnering nonetheless. So kind of in that concept, we're talking about like starting off. So Angela, I'll begin with you. So when a nonprofit begins using AI, how can they assess whether it's actually helping them achieve their goals? And whether that's like improving their efficiency, increasing donations, expanding their outreach. How can they assess it and make sure that it's actually successful?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. ROI always at some point, is gonna, um, have to weigh in on the decision. And I this is my personal opinion. I think it's slightly early to be sure, about how those investments are going to play out. I think that, starting off though with some clear goals about what do we want to accomplish by adding this, by adding Copilot as an example, let's figure out 1, 2, 3 things we want to accomplish. And then once the team's been able to use it for a while, because I do think it takes time to really be effective with these tools, then come back and see, did it sort of pan out? Did it help in the way that we thought it was going to help? And I think an important thing with AI is I know there's been fear in the marketplace. I can't say I hear this a lot from our nonprofit friends, but there's fear in the marketplace about AI taking jobs. And my personal opinion at this point is it's not really about, replacing someone's job. It's really about augmenting or ameliorating the output of the work or the quality of the work. So for example, let's say, you have a marketing person or a marketing team, and you want to take advantage of using some generative AI to develop, your monthly marketing plan, or to create imagery that's very specific and customized, for your organization and your target audience. So having the development team learn how to appropriately prompt the AI that's included in Canva, as an example. So it's going to hopefully help them, but it takes some time to learn how to prompt to get the output that you want. I think similarly, so marketing is one example, but grant writing is obviously another thing that's huge, in the nonprofit space. And, there's some caution. I mean, everybody's probably heard out in education, there's sensitivity around how much writing can we have AI do for us? And is that, frowned upon? Will the recipients run our submission through an AI test, to see if we really wrote? So there's some caution, some hesitancy around that, but certainly, kind of like the comment about brainstorming, we can definitely start using AI to help to create the structure for what the response is going to be. There's going to be a human element in the writing. You're not just going to say, hey, write me this grant proposal and send it off. You're still going to need, those experts in that field to learn how to leverage AI to make the great grant writing process faster and even more effective, to make sure, for example, that you're hitting on all the points that potential grantor might be looking for, which can be hard to do when it's just up to human beings. So that's where, AI can become a tool to help make us more effective. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. And Edwin, I saw you agreeing a lot, so I want to allow some space for you to chime in on this one.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about that last point that you made. I'm on the board of a nonprofit that does environmental education, and I was helping them use AI for a grant application, and we literally just took their application and the scoring rubric and fed it to Google Notebook, which is a free AI tool, and we said, "How do you think we'll fare?" And it gave us where we were missing the mark, and it told us what we could do to make our application stronger, and that's something that a beleaguered grant writer who is usually submitting about 24 hours before the deadline has never had the opportunity to do, to get like third-party validation of their application. And that's now something that you can do in seconds or do continuously throughout the process. So it's so cool what it enables. And I can't second what Angela said anymore about the fact that it's not about replacing jobs. It is really just like everyone's getting promoted to a little bit higher level of thinking. Just like we don't have to necessarily spell check anymore the way that we used to. Now there's sometimes even a little bit more support that lets us be the executive editor instead of just the copywriter.
Absolutely. Adding new skills into our tool belt, for
Yes.
sure. But I'm happy that you opened up that segue into grant writing because this is a huge nonprofit space, so we can't not discuss fundraising. So Edwin, I'll begin with you. Many nonprofits rely on fundraising efforts, as we know. So how can AI help improve donor engagement and personalize their communications and, optimize those fundraising strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think personalization is the biggest opportunity that generative AI presents. There's a really great talk from AARP that they did at the AWS conference last year in March. It's available on the AWS website, and they talked about essentially writing one-to-one emails to millions of people in their database, and they're able to do that at scale because they have data in a centralized place and they use generative AI to customize exactly what they're going to say to that person. So it could just be the opening paragraph is unique to me because I'm in the DC area and I'm this many years old, and they know that I have two kids, and that might be different than someone in Arizona when with no kids. So that kind of personalization on data that you already have on folks is super easy, and it's something that you can actually test out yourself. You can pull I'll say this. If you have a very secure environment, so not like a free ChatGPT license, but your own organizational environment where it's okay to use AI, you can actually ask to like get a screenshot of some of the data you have on a donor, not their personal information, but the data on a donor, and then say, help me come up with like an outreach email based on XYZ, and it can actually tailor that response to the data that you have on them. So it's just like a really cool experiment on what's possible at a broader scale. And then beyond the personalization, there's also a really great customer support element to generative AI. Angela already mentioned kind of the IVR chatbots that we've been interacting with, but there's a very large nonprofit in the cancer space that switched some of their call center support. Before, donors, if they had an issue, they had to call in and talk to people. And their goals have always been to bring down the amount of time it takes to get those issues resolved. And now they have generative AI solving those issues up front, and then it gets kicked to a human being if it's not able to be solved by generative AI. So they're saving money, the donor's getting a great experience. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the fundraising space. And then, we haven't even gotten into its ability to create fundraising campaigns and be a partner with you as you think through what's an outreach strategy to Gen Z, or what's a way that I can roll out my bequeath strategy. It can be a really great thought partner in that as well.
Absolutely. And Angela, I want to allow space for you to chime in on this conversation as well, because fundraising it's such an important factor that touches pretty much every nonprofit. Anyone on this call, I'm sure, has had to deal with fundraising at some point. So any additional perspective or insights that you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, and I completely agree with everything that was shared. I think when you think about taking that down to then, but how do I action that? You know, what I anticipate and what I think we're seeing in the marketplace is that the tools that are already catering to your particular space, whichever tool you use, is it Neon, whatever tool, um, they're all going to be incorporating AI in ways that they believe are going to drive better outcomes, and thus for them, of course, attract more customers for them. And so they are motivated to incorporate these tools right in the tool set they're using already. So um, most of the clients that we're working with, they're using very well-known tools. And my expectation is that the tools that have, the largest client base, they are going to incorporate AI and make that available. They may find ways to, have paywalls, in front of some of those tools, but initially it seems that they're trying to learn as much as we're trying to learn. And so the tools are tending to be free, or at least a piece of those tools will be free to get started with. So I just wanted to add that point, that if you're thinking about how do I start doing this, look to the tools you're using, assuming that they are mainstream, uh, you know, well-known tools.
That's really good feedback. And with that feedback, I want to cover a very important topic for when it does come to using AI and optimizing and leveraging all these tools that are available in data security. So data security obviously is a huge concern for nonprofits. So Angela, just would love to hear from you. What are some steps that nonprofits should take to ensure that, AI tools they adopt are secure and that they're protecting their clients, their donors, their fund, like protecting the data of all the stakeholders involved.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think there's actually two different aspects. There's the very direct answer to the question, but then there's also the what are people, I think, thinking, especially in these times.
Mhm.
So I'm going to start with what are people thinking? So in some cases, so let's take like AI meeting note takers as an example. So these have, everyone's using them now, or everybody has started using them. Everybody thought, hey, this is great. This helps me a lot. Now I've got, concrete data about, who was there, what was said. But the flip side of it, people realize very quickly is now that I've captured that data, could I be asked to provide that data? And so we've seen, you know, scenarios where people are deciding, okay, we're not going to use it for this type of call as a group. We're agreeing we're not going to use it until we better understand what kinds of requests for data we could get. And so that's more of, I'd say, sort of a political environment kind of response to it, is that just thinking about the data that you then have access to by using these tools and could be asked to provide, that's element one. Now, the other side of it is, for any tool that you're going to use, and again, I'm very much believing that most people will access AI via the mainstream tools that they're already using. Each of those vendors should and would publish documentation related to their tools, specifying things like privacy expectations, where the data is stored. And where data is stored has always been something they've had to speak to, because different regions have different rules around that. So I would be looking specifically at their documentation, and I would, as always, because this is always, I think, the case with applications that are available. There's an application for everything. There's 1,000 applications for everything, actually. Looking carefully, using some scrutiny about which applications we select, making sure that, you feel comfortable about where the data is stored, who the company is, because it's always been the case that you could get a great deal on an app through one of those services that helps you to find apps for discounts and stuff, but then realize it's operated out of a location that you're not so comfortable with. And so looking to the vendor documentation before turning on those features, just to make sure we understand where the data is stored, what the privacy expectations are, and the security that vendor is providing, I think is an important way to approach that.
Absolutely. And Edwin, I know we've said this countless times, just the conversation about AI just rapidly advancing. So are you able to tell us just how can nonprofits ensure that the AI tools that they adopt today will still be relevant and scalable for their needs in the coming years? And is it okay to evolve past certain tools and advance to new ones? But yeah, we're going to forward think a little bit. Just yeah, how nonprofits can ensure that the tools they're adopting are still relevant and scalable for their business needs.
Yeah, and I would say you can't. That would be my short answer. I can't put, if you gave me $100 to place a bet on which tool that is out right now is going to be the
Mhm.
winner in a few years, um, it's probably going to be something that hasn't come out yet, and the world might look completely different 3 or 4 years from now. So, what I would advise instead is to stay laser focused on the problems that you're trying to solve within the organization, and then have commitments to those software products that you choose that are not so far out that you're stuck in using something that is not going to serve you. I think Angela's already mentioned so many great products that are either very lightweight, almost free, very easy to use, or are like embedded in software products that I think will go the distance, like Microsoft Office and Google Workspace. So that would be my advice, is not necessarily like pick a winner and uh, go all in on that piece of software, but rather be flexible, focus on the problems that you're trying to solve. Be open to all of the vendors that you already have, and keep following along for their AI offerings and adopt those as early as you can, or as early as it makes sense if it seems like it'll provide value. But don't necessarily worry about being right 5 years from now. I think the world might look
Right.
very different.
Absolutely. So it is okay to evolve.
Oh my gosh, please. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Love that. Okay, so we have about a little over 10 minutes before we open up for Q&A, so I want to get a few more questions in. I know that we've talked a lot about AI, and then, just pairing that with this human aspect. So obviously, when it comes to that, we have to talk about staff. So would just love to hear from you both, just as nonprofits consider adopting to AI, how can they support their staff in embracing these new technologies, especially for organizations where many team members may not have a strong tech background? So Angela, I'll begin with you. Just would love to hear your input, and then Edwin, I'll allow some space afterwards for you to chime in.
Yeah, I love this because it is all about starting to get the experience. I mean, I have heard so many people when Chat GPT became a thing. I mean, I heard so many people that really weren't that into technology just raving about it because they did one thing, they tried it, and so encouraging the team to try to use an AI tool that is free or available to them, I think is a great way to do it. And you could do it with a AI challenge within your team. Like, to really encourage that and have people come back and even have like, who's got the best, who did the best AI solution kind of event. I think that would be a great way to just get people started because that's really what you need is get people to kind of dip their toes in the water.
Absolutely. And Edwin, would love to hear any insights you have on this topic as well, getting that staff buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'll say is, particularly among more junior staff, I've found that they are already using these tools, even if they're not telling you that they are. So there might be a comfort level that you don't know is there. What's most important is bringing that out into the open and having transparent conversations about what tools are being used and putting some rules of the road out there.
Mhm.
Um, I think the other big opportunity for nonprofits, for all of us, is just ensuring that there's um, almost like a knowledge feedback loop so that when somebody goes out and tries something, I use this prompt in ChatGPT and I got this result and it was really good. Just have like a little notebook of that your staff can go back to and say, oh, wow, this is like, it's really easy for me to use this and get really great results. So that information sharing, that knowledge sharing is a big part of how you take down the temperature on AI. The other thing that I would say is just make sure you are explaining the use of AI as a means toward making their jobs easier, making their lives easier, and not efficiency for the sake of efficiency so that we can make cuts in the future. That is what gets the alarm bells moving. And particularly for those who are in the impact space and deal with clients, the idea of a machine now taking over that high touch human element is really terrifying. So you want to make sure that any changes that you're introducing are human centered first, and then the AI as a tool to support that human activity.
Nothing can replace that human touch. Nothing at all. So thank you both for sharing. I want to touch on another thing. So for nonprofits looking to implement AI, what should they look for in technology partners? I heard you guys speaking a lot about just exchanging different resources, and there's a lot of amazing businesses in Indianapolis doing this work that may not be as well known in the nonprofit space. So for those nonprofits that are looking to, kick off their AI journey, what should they look for in technology partners to ensure that they're getting the tools and support that are aligned with their mission and budget? So, Edwin, I'll begin with you, and then Angela, allow you some space to chime in as well.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the solutions might already exist in the tools that you use today, and that's a great place to start because you have some level of buy-in with staff already and some level of awareness of those tools. So that's a really great starting place. When we're talking about bigger like IT infrastructure questions, I would, and not just gassing her up, but I would look for folks who are like Angela, who seem to know a lot about the nonprofit sector, who understand some of the nuances that other larger like national firms might overlook. That question about like Read AI and all those AI meeting assistants, that's real. Like there are people who are now creating discoverable events that they have to turn over to lawyers every time they hop into a meeting, and who knows who's going to be reading those things. And for someone to be cognizant of that, that's what you're really looking for is that expertise in the nonprofit sector in your specific context. So for that kind of partner, I would definitely look to folks who others in your area, in your sector can say, yeah, they're a good partner to us, and they actually get nonprofits.
And then Angela, yeah, I mean, everyone speaks so highly of you. I love it. But would love to allow some space for you to chime in as well and provide any insights you have.
Well, as a managed service provider, it's our job to understand, what's available and help, you know, nonprofits to, you know, bridge these gaps. And so definitely, I think talk to your IT provider first to find out, how they can help. And, at the very least, I would expect your IT provider to point you in the right direction. Even if it means, hey, let's get with the senior developer from product X so we can have a conversation about how we can best leverage AI in this tool, that I would definitely expect your IT provider to assist with that. But then also, which is something that I think that everyone really does already, and I just want to encourage people to continue to do, is to have these discussions with peers, kind of like this one here today, to figure out what's working for them, because what's working for them can work for you too. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's better if we don't. So having those peer conversations, I think will help everybody to inch forward because this is certainly a space that is changing and developing every day. And so it's really going to take, staying engaged to kind of keep up with the new opportunities.
Absolutely. Changing every day, evolving everyone. I feel like that's the word of the morning. But we have about 5 minutes before we open up for Q&A. So I just want to get one final question in, and end on a high note. Like I would love to just hear any success stories that you both have experienced in this space. Because we know AI, it just has a lot of potential for social impact. So can either of you share any examples of nonprofits that have successfully used AI to drive positive change in their communities or in specific causes? So Edwin, I'll begin with you, and then Angela will finish off with you, and then open up for some Q&A after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the national level, there have been some really great stories. One of them was for foreign aid workers. A group created a database that gave foreign aid workers near real-time data and like recommendations that if they were in like a conflict zone or somewhere dangerous, it could kind of pre-alert them to the fact that they needed to move. Here's where you can go. Here's where resources and allies might be. So thinking of that as like literally a life-saving tool for folks who are doing good work and trying to help communities is really incredible. And then, at a much smaller level with some of our customers on Launchpath, they're using our tools to do everything from analyze survey data to come up with new solutions in their communities. And then there's this one small nonprofit that we work with that is just constantly on this mission to create new revenue, diverse revenue opportunities. And they're creating like a merch store, and they're creating new membership benefits. And they just keep using AI in really smart ways to uh, do what they never would have been able to do 2 or 3 years ago. And it's leading to some really big results on their bottom line.
Absolutely. And Angela would love to hear some from you as well.
Yes, and Edwin even mentioned a great, example earlier on. But, you know, I think that, some of the larger national organizations, of course, have made some real strides and impacts, that have been, discussed, pretty openly, in the news. And one of the examples I'm thinking of is American Red Cross, who's really been able to demonstrate some specific, examples. One being able to, they've been able to figure out where to position themselves to help with the fires in California sooner, so they can be there sooner and be providing support for those people. So that was a great story. I know that they've talked a lot about, and also blood donation campaigns. They've been able to figure out or better understand, and this is more of the predictive AI front. Both of these examples are, but they've been able to, personalize the outreach and figure out, better understand donor retention, and figure out who to target to get the blood supply correct. Because, obviously we all know the issue is always having the right types. That's always been the challenge. And so figuring out how to boost those types that are harder for them to get has been something they've talked quite a bit about being able to accomplish.
Wow. Did you hear that, everyone? AI can save lives. I don't think I ever would have saw the day, but no, those were some really amazing examples. And obviously, when you put AI to use in the most productive way possible for the mission, the goal, it can make a serious impact. So I do want to at this time allow some space for Q&A. Again, we've tackled how this can be just a, challenging yet innovative space when it comes to this AI discussion. So any question is a good question. I got one in my messages while you guys were speaking or answering a question. Someone asked, is Copilot considered a closed AI system, the Copilot that you purchase a license for?
So I believe the answer is yes. There's two different iterations when you're using, or two different ways to use Copilot. There's more of the open web way, and there's the internal business way of using it. And there's an option when you are literally engaging with it. So in terms of the business piece, part of their documentation specifies that, none of the content that you're feeding it will not leave your organization, but it does get retained within the organization. There are specific places where administrators can go to see some of those searches, some of the prompts. So it is published, but there's sort of both ways to look at it. And I think that goes back to that earlier question about understanding, before I use a tool, understanding sort of that data model, privacy associated with it is really, really important, because it's not guaranteed, that it's not going to be shared. I would actually think of it kind of in the opposite way, that if I put it out into the universe, it's probably can be shared unless the vendor has specifically stated that it won't and how it won't.
Absolutely. Edwin, anything you want to add to that?
No, no, that's spot on.
Gotcha. Okay, and then we have a question from Lindsay in the chat. Lindsay asks, do you feel as if donors will recognize the use of AI in their communications? Same for funders in terms of grant apps. I recognize the use of AI in my team's writing instantly.
I would say yes, if it's obvious that it was written by AI. And I would encourage, if you want to encourage the use of AI for writing, two things. One, limit the amount AI is authoring. You can use it to edit, which is phenomenal. I'm kind of verbose sometimes, and it just simplifies everything for me. Or there's some really great email outreach tools that will do like one personalized sentence, and then the rest of it has to come from you. The more you let AI write, the more it's going to sound like AI. And then the second thing is you should play with the prompts that you're using, and you can get it to match your tone, and you can kind of,
Why?
what's that? Oh, so you can get it to match your tone, or you can actually try to get it to be a little bit more human in the way that it communicates. So it's great because it's free. You can keep on testing, asking for different versions of the sentence to get it to sound more like you. But yeah, I would say that if you the biggest issue is that you just don't really have anything to say. And then the AI is being forced to say things for you. And that's when you're going to sound very obviously like AI.
Absolutely. Angela, anything that you would like to add to that?
Totally agree with Edwin on all of that. And I think what he kind of highlighted was this is why, the people that write the communications still have to be the experts. And what they're learning is how to appropriately use the AI, how to prompt it in the right way to produce, to make their job, you know, better, make the output better. So definitely I would anticipate that they would be very conscious about that output.
Absolutely. We are the experts. The AI is just our thought partner for sure. I have a couple more questions that came through. We have one that says there are a lot of great benefits to AI. Are we concerned about the environmental impact? Specifically, there is a bright spotlight on ChatGPT and how much water it uses for simple requests.
Yes, very concerned. And in your earlier question about values, I didn't mention it explicitly, but there are some nonprofits that are in the environmental space that are trying to limit the use of AI because it has these big impacts on our environment. Um, so it's important to remember that this is not an infinite resource, and like anything that could just be a simple internet search doesn't have to go through AI. So, it is important for us to remember the planet as we're exploring these tools. We just have to make a good cost benefit analysis about what we're using AI for. I know that there's a lot of work happening to switch a lot of the power centers around AI to renewable or nuclear energy. I don't know how that's going to go, but I think that it's important for us as just good stewards of the environment to be aware that we're having an impact when we run our queries.
Wow, you learn something new every day because I'm gonna go do a Google search after that question. So thank
So
you. I
can
won't
I
say
hop
who asked it because they directed it to me privately, but thank you for asking that question. That is the purpose of this call.
Deja, can I
But
can I say one more thing?
yeah, absolutely, please.
So this is part of the challenge that we have is like trying to be good ethical consumers because when you run a Google search, half the time it does an AI query as well. So it's not as easy as just saying like, I'm going to sit this one out and avoid it. We have to really, I think it's going to have to be more systemic solutions that will address this issue, just like everything else related to environment.
Absolutely. Wow. Angela, anything that you want to add to that?
No, I ditto everything Edwin said.
Noted. Okay, perfect. And then I have one more question that came through as well. They asked, what should we be concerned about or careful with when using AI, considering the political and funding challenges nonprofits are facing? Very, very, yeah. That topic has been touching a lot of the nonprofits we've been working with. So I want to allow space for both of you to answer, and this can impact pretty much everyone on the call to some extent. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to what Angela said earlier about the AI meeting recorders. Similarly, if every time your staff uses ChatGPT, they're creating a discoverable event, and uh, if that gets subpoenaed, then what they're asking is now available to somebody else. There's a I've heard in a call recently with a lot of nonprofits in the environmental space who received majority of their funding from federal government earlier this year, trying to figure out how to massage their websites so it wasn't flagged by the federal government as being too focused on DEI or too focused on the environment. And somebody said like, "Oh, I'm using ChatGPT to help me think through new ways of doing this." And then the person leading the session said, "Okay, great, but don't use ChatGPT in that way because now you're actually just saying you're trying to skirt the federal government's orders." So you just have to be careful about what you feed it. And then the second thing, which isn't really related to the political environment, but even if you're in a closed AI system, try to avoid any PII. Try to avoid, sorry, personally identifiable information. Don't put stuff into AI that you wouldn't want it to know about others. And even if some company has like very clear terms of service and how they're going to use your data. I just don't really trust that all of that is always going to be the case. So just be really careful and protect your donors, protect your beneficiaries for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
I agree with everything Edwin said. I mean, we've seen how things play out before. I mean, think about, access to iPhones, should Apple open up the iPhone because this happened, things can change in terms of the rules of the game. So being very cautious about any information that's being put into AI is probably a smart way to go. And from a financial perspective, I also wanted to say, if you're thinking about, should we spend more to have the AI tool or the AI, version of the license, that is obviously, spending money on IT is a constant consideration for every nonprofit on this call. And I think that it is important to, I think, look at, maybe not go all in on things if there's a cost, but test things out with, we talked earlier about, are there three goals that we have? Let's try it and see how we're able to, if we're able to achieve those goals. So trying it typically, means we're going to designate, a subset to do this and not everyone necessarily to have paid subscriptions. And then we'll be able to see if it was effective. So if it's the marketing team try it to meet this goal. If they do, great. But proof of concepts is the term we tend to use in the IT community. We do proof of concepts of things before we go all in financially.
absolutely cautious, move at a cautious speed. We have another chat or question in the chat from Stephanie Berry. They asked, can you share more how AI impacts the environment? This is something I've never considered.
I think it's somebody also put a really helpful link in the chat, but it's really just about energy use and the AI is when we put a prompt into ChatGPT, it's like it's going to a data center with like a bazillion computers in it, and we're just using a ton of energy. Previously, there was a big realization that like Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity, and it's very similar in that like here's this new technology. People think that like they're just interacting with the technology, but no, there is this real world impact that's happening. I think we'll probably come out of this on the other side with more leniency for the energy use for generative AI because it seems to have more real world benefit for most of us. But it's definitely a challenge. And yeah, so in order for the energy that we're using to not um, sorry, we use a lot of water in order to cool the computers that are in the data centers, is my understanding. I'm not an expert in it. But it just seems like water use and energy, which is, often coming from coal or other non-renewable sources, is the primary issue.
And as consumers or clients of some of these vendors that will be providing these services, I think a really good thing is to use the platform that you have, with your account managers or otherwise to, you know, lay out, what's important to you, bring up, environmental impact so that they're hearing that regularly as something that they should be focused on. I think that's one way that you can also try to influence, each of the, whoever your Microsoft rep, you can try to influence in a small way, but I think still a valid way, that you as a client of theirs, what's important to you.
For sure. And I want to squeeze in one last question because this is new information for me. And I never thought about the other side of like just getting these responses and these ideas just at a quick pace from, artificial intelligence, the other side of that. So thinking more so in the technology use and the AI and the artificial intelligence, how can people at nonprofits ensure that the technology they use doesn't inadvertently exclude or disadvantage the people that they're aiming to help? Because that's also on the other side of using these tools. So would love to just hear from either of you your insights on that, and then we'll have to wrap up after that.
I'll just say something really fast because I bet Edwin has something on this too. But I mean, it's pretty well known in the industry that some of the training that has been done so far has excluded certain communities to a certain extent. Not unlike what you've seen in the pharmaceutical industry
Mm.
over the years, where a lot a lot of groups were excluded from trials and thus efficacy isn't as clear. So same kind of thing. It's a very well-known problem. And I think my perspective is that's another thing to ask and another thing to bring up as important to you with your account managers, for any products you're looking to spend money on, that, hey, it's important that the data that I'm getting is actually reflective of the communities I'm trying to impact. So Edwin.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say we've talked a lot about AI as like a brainstorm partner. Just like if we were sitting in a room with our colleagues brainstorming, there's going to be implicit bias when you're brainstorming with AI. A real example, if you go into ChatGPT and you ask for 20 solutions to help job seekers find jobs, it'll provide you with a bunch of solutions. If you ask it for male job seekers, it'll provide you with solutions. If you ask it for female job seekers, it'll provide you with solutions. That tailoring is probably never going to have anything that's explicitly sexist or biased in it, but there will be implicit biases in that. I bet one of the first things that it prescribes to the female job seeker is childcare, and it might never mention that for the man, even though both women and men can be parents. So we have to be the eyes and the final approver. We have to be there scrutinizing the outputs of AI at every step. And that's really the way that we can fight bias, the same way that we do when we're talking to other people.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I round of applause for our speakers today. Today has been it's just been super beneficial for me. So I can only imagine the impact on people on this call who are leaders or who are pushing to learn more or who are new to the space. So I want to just say thank you to our amazing speakers for being here. Happy birthday to a fellow co-panelist, Edwin. He decided to gift us on his own birthday with his presence. So yeah, I thank you guys so much for this conversation, and I appreciate everyone that decided to join the call this morning as well. it takes all of us to continue to push this narrative forward a little bit more. So, thank you for deciding to start your weekend off learning. So I invite you all back for our April call. It will be covering mental health awareness as we are entering that month. It'll be April 18th. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our amazing co-panelists, and I hope to see you all again in April. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend.